This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Janet Stewart is away. The grandfather of a 15-year-old charged in a series of deadly attacks in Winnipeg last Monday says the entire family is in shock. They're struggling to come to terms with the crimes he's accused of and what it means for him. CBC's Andrew Wiles spoke to the teen's grandfather.
Police arrested the 15-year-old teen Sunday based on a Canada-wide warrant. His grandfather says when he found out where his grandson was, he went to make sure that he was taken in safely. We can't share the man's name because that would identify the 15-year-old accused. His grandfather says the arrest was heartbreaking to watch.
To see my young grandson coming out, you have to have his hands up, and he followed the instructions of the police, showed that he had no weapon, and I went and wept with him. Because I don't know where this is going for him.
36-year-old Danielle Valentine died. Her family says she was homeless. 54-year-old Marvin Felix also died as a result of the attacks. He was in a wheelchair. Another man is in critical condition. Two 15-year-old teens have been charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of aggravated assault. The grandfather of the teen arrested Sunday says he understands that people are outraged, but wants the public to leave judgment to the courts.
The worst case scenario is he was deeply involved, and that's going to affect him for the rest of his life, and our family for the rest of our lives.
The grandfather described a teen with a challenged childhood. He says his grandson hasn't attended school since grade 6 or 7. He was put in a group home, but it only seemed to make matters worse. He ran away from care, and his grandpa says he was homeless at the time of the attacks.
I kept thinking about the families that they are suffering, yet I know that, but it hurts to see your flesh and blood.
The grandfather says his family's prayers are with the victims' families. Andrew Wiles, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Premier Heather Stepson was asked about the violence today. 4 Manitobans who didn't have proper housing were violently assaulted, resulting in 2 deaths. The crime involved a youth who was in government care at the time. We asked the Premier if the system charged with protecting Manitobans is failing.
It's horrific what happened. It's an absolute tragedy, and our hearts go out to the families who are affected by that and the individuals. And certainly I know that there are challenges within our CFS system. There are challenges across the board. There's challenges with crime out there in our community right now, and we recognize that. And that's why Minister Gertson has been working very closely in the Department of Justice with law enforcement to ensure that they have the tools that they need to make sure that we're bringing things to justice.
On to Winnipeg's mayoral race, where another candidate was talking about crime today, both from a policy standpoint and from the perspective of a recent victim. CBC's Bartley Kivas joins us live in the newsroom. Bartley, what happened today?
Fiona, candidate Rick Shawn held a news conference this morning to talk about cycling infrastructure, and part of his promise involved bike theft. At 10:30 a.m., Shawn spoke outside Granite Curling Club, where he promised to double annual spending on new bike and pedestrian paths to just over $9 million. He also promised to fill in gaps in the city's cycling network and install better wayfinding signs.
We spent a lot of money building the trails, but to visitors, or even to myself, people like myself who go to different areas of the city, it's often really hard to figure out where you are and where you're going.
Shawn also promised to install 500 new bike racks across the city at a cost of $250,000. He also promised to replace Winnipeg's bike registration system with a national free theft deterrent program. But 85 minutes later, this happened. Shawn drove back to his retail store, the Wilderness Supply, walked inside, got distracted, and had his bike stolen from his truck. This happened one day after another mayoral candidate, Sean Loney, announced his own plan to reduce bike theft, and earlier in August, another mayoral candidate, Rana Bukhari, had catalytic converters stolen from her campaign RV.
We also heard from another mayoral candidate. What did Kevin Klein have to say?
Klein promised to cut red tape for businesses and developers. Klein says he wants to ensure businesses only have to contact one office at the city when they apply for various permits. He says businesses sometimes have to contact as many as 5 offices. Klein can't say how much money it would cost to hire additional staff to make this happen and streamline the permits process, but he says his plan will pay for itself.
Any FTEs that we add to the Property Planning and Development Department will return the investment quickly to the City of Winnipeg.
Klein spoke at Canadian Footwear in the Exchange District. That store is owned by Brian Sharfstein. He's a member of the Winnipeg Police Board. Sharfstein says there's no issue playing host to a political event.
Clearly, I've had the ability, being the vice chair of the Winnipeg Police Board, to wear my hat as a board member for the police board. And when I'm in business, I wear my business hat. And I make that very clear in any conversation. I never get confused.
There are 14 people running for mayor. That vote is in 8 weeks on October 26th. Fiona.
That is CBC's Bartley Clevis live from the newsroom. Manitoba is joining other provinces in offering relief from sky-high inflation, but only those the government thinks are most in need. The CBC's Ian Fraze reports.
The way inflation's going, Jenna O'Hare wishes prices would start sliding.
Good girl. It's a tight time of year, especially with food prices and gas prices and everything.
Manitobans have been through a lot.
On Wednesday, the government promised her and others some relief.
It is beyond clear that many Manitobans are hurting and having a hard time making ends meet.
That means checks for families with children provided they make less than $175,000 in a year. $250 for the first child and $200 for each additional child. That'll come in handy for O'Hare's family. Her 6 kids spent much of their summer at home.
Trips to the lake because of gas prices, maybe we would normally go to the museum, the different things that cost money to enter that we have had to think twice about what we're going to be doing daily.
Seniors who make less than $40,000 are also cashing in.
You're going to get a $300 check.
Fantastic! Wow, is he for real? Give it to my wife, and she'll figure out which one of 7 spots she's got to put it into.
In the past, the province has been criticized for giving the education tax rebate checks to all homeowners, no matter how wealthy. But this time around, it's income tested. Single people don't qualify. But the government stressed previous rebates helped them and others. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives argues the government can do more.
The question is why families with such a high income are getting our public dollars when we know that there's working class and more modest income people that are spending a larger proportion of their income on food, housing, and other things that are rising quickly.
Manitoba is also making a permanent boost to the monthly employment and income assistance rate. That's an extra $50 per adult without dependent children and an extra $25 for people with disabilities. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's Overdose Awareness Day, and if you were by the legislative grounds, you may have noticed people wearing purple. The color signifies a person who died from an overdose. CBC's Lamea Abuzaid has more from the mothers left behind.
This honors loved ones lost to drug overdoses and toxic supply. Arlene Lascolm is the chair of Mums Stop the Harm in Manitoba. She lost her son to overdose in 2014.
The danger that people put themselves in just trying to access the substance that they need is unacceptable.
Lascolm was hoping for one specific person to show up at the legislature.
Our premier needs to show up. She needs to be here. We lose somebody every day.
I know I have a pretty hectic schedule for today, but what I will say to her and to all others who have lost loved ones to this horrific disease, it's very real and it hurts so many families.
Advocates are hoping Manitoba gets safe consumption sites, but the premier isn't convinced it's needed.
But this is my girl. Mwah.
Janice Gillum lost both her daughter and stepson to fentanyl poisoning just months apart in 2020.
I just want to tell parents out there, it can happen to you. Don't say it can't happen. it does happen.
Gillum says she hopes for a change soon so no child has to deal with the loss of a parent like her grandson.
He always knew his mom had issues, as he called it. But, you know, we always made sure he knew they weren't with him, how much she loved him, adored him. He grew up thinking that way, and now he knows that Mommy is not here with us anymore, and he loves her, and he's ready. He's ready to be the change.
11-year-old Jackson Wilson says he wears I Am the Change t-shirt to school and talks to his classmates about it.
Just to realize that it's bad and that it's a real problem. Looking around and seeing how many people have died and how many people are sad and torn apart by this.
Gillum hopes Wilson will one day stand here and talk about the lives saved by safe consumption sites. Lamia Abuzaid, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Universities and colleges across Manitoba are celebrating the return to in-person learning. The University of Winnipeg had its first in-person orientation in 2 years today. The CBC's Joanne Roberts has the story.
If you're not clear with faculty, wave me down, I'll point you in the right direction.
Students lined up at the Duckworth Centre this morning for university orientation. There was a sense of nervousness in the air. For many, it's the first time they've stepped foot inside a school in 2 years.
I talked about it with my parents. I told them I was just a little nervous, and my parents both being U of W grads and both have went here, I talked to them about it and they're like, you know what, you're going to be fine. You're going to fit right in. Don't worry about it.
Sammy Carvello is a first-year student at the University of Winnipeg. She wants to be a teacher, so she's enrolled in the 6-year combined education program. Although she enjoyed virtual learning for the last 2 years, she's ready to be in person.
But me, I've always been very visual. I need the in-person, I need the talking, I like the structure.
Jan Stewart is the interim provost and vice president academic for the university. She says this year is special. 3 years of cohorts are starting together on campus, new students and students who spent their first years learning off campus.
The lawn will be, full of life, and it'll be just really good to welcome students back.
Post-secondary institutions across Manitoba are gearing up for students' return. Red River College says it's focused on hands-on learning, so being in person is important. The University of Brandon says it's focused on making sure students are supported as they transition from 2 years of virtual learning to being on campus for the first time.
Majority of students are excited to come back. Wanting to really much be in the classroom to learn from their instructors and also wanting to connect with each other.
I'll point out accessibility services here.
Carvello says her nerves started to calm as she met the other first years.
Knowing that there's people around me who care about me and are going to help me grow, and seeing if I can do anything to give back would be really awesome.
Soon, these hallways will become familiar and students will find a new normal with each other on campus. Joanne Roberts, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, time now to check in with CBC meteorologist John Sauter. John, today was picture perfect for the last day of August. Is this heat going to stick around?
Yeah, you know what? One more day, and we could even be setting some records in the west. Tomorrow, Brandon, 33.0 set back in 2007. So tomorrow we're looking at Brandon region getting up to 35, 36 degrees.
Wow, that's hot.
Yeah, and right now it's warm in Winnipeg too. Let's get to the current conditions. Shooting for a 30 today. That was my call. We got to 29 point something, but I say close enough. Dew point up there as well, up around 19 last hour, now 18. So, I always say when the dew point temperature gets up around 19, 20, it's getting pretty muggy. It's frizzy hair, maybe just a ponytail or ball cap, that sort of thing. But 18, still humid out there. West winds at 7. The winds, I was thinking 20 to 30 or so today. Never even got anywhere near that strong. So the pressure gradient around these systems is starting to relax a little bit. But 29 right now, nothing but sunshine here in the south. A little bit more cloud in the north. I'm going to talk more about northern Manitoba here in a second. But I want to look out to the west of us, because this is the type of heat that is heat warning type heat. Excessive heat warnings in effect for much of southern Saskatchewan and Alberta. As a matter of fact, temperatures today at 4 o'clock this afternoon look like this all across southern Saskatchewan, and that is the kind of heat that's going to leak into southwestern Manitoba for tomorrow. Now, Now, we don't have a heat warning here. 2 days at 32 or higher. Didn't quite get there in Winnipeg, but the other part of the equation is the overnight lows. We've been getting cooler overnight. Even in southern Saskatchewan, there were really warm temperatures during the day over the last little while, but the nighttime was cooling off. So that was the piece of threshold that was missing. I think we may start to see heat warnings in southwestern Manitoba tomorrow, although we're going to see a cool down on the way for Friday. So we may not see that into Manitoba. Remains to be seen. Look at Futurecast. Nice and clear. And if you like this sunny weather, this is your friend, this high pressure right here, which tomorrow will move off to the east and give us the return flow. So it'll be more of a southwesterly breeze tomorrow. And in the afternoon, it picks up. It gets to about 30 or 50 kilometers an hour. And then I'm going to be watching this one in the morning on Thursday, and it'll truck right across northern Saskatchewan into Manitoba, the northwestern edge of Manitoba, with some rain by Thursday afternoon. As we get into the overnight period, and this is 1:30 in the morning on Friday, notice this line right here stretching down through the Red River Valley. Now, this is really just a sprinkle. Not a lot of rain, but it's more about the wind shift and the cooler temperatures in behind this low that is by Friday morning out over Hudson Bay, and we're in more of a northwesterly flow. See these moving arrows? That's the flow of wind at the surface, and it'll be northwest at around 30 to 40 and much, much cooler on Friday. And then as that system moves away, the winds relax a little bit, and we're back into sunshine, even Friday, but especially Saturday and on through the weekend. Lots and lots of sunshine, and that's partially thanks to this big ridge to the west. Now, on Friday, you can see the cooler air is in our neighborhood, but then as we get into the weekend, that warmth starts to make a real surge into the eastern prairies. And it is going to make a big difference again as we head through the weekend. Up to 6 a.m., 20 millimeters in Churchill to Dooley Lake and areas like Brochet. And then for the rest of the day, we get another 10 in Churchill. So 20 to 30 millimeters, but it's just in the northern edge of the province. There's the low tonight under clear skies. Great stargazing. The moon sets early. It's only a crescent moon. 18, sunny, light winds in the morning. Gorgeous morning to get out and walk the dog, and then 32 in the afternoon. Southwest winds at 30 to 50. Don't get used to it. We're cooler Friday, as I mentioned, and then 23, and we're going to claw our way back into the upper 20s by Sunday. Even warmer for holiday Monday. I'll have that a little later in the 7-day forecast.
The weather update is brought to you by Home Equip, your trusted local source for Pride Mobility scooters. From sales to rental and repair, our team is here to serve you.
The UN and Pakistan are asking for $160 million in aid as record floods continue to devastate the country. 1/3 of Pakistan is underwater. More than 1,100 people have died, including 380 children. Nearly 1,000 healthcare facilities are impacted. The country's southern province has been the hardest hit, receiving nearly 5 times more rain than the 30-year average. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres plans to visit the country next week. The United States has already announced $30 million in support for Pakistan. Canada has pledged $5 million in humanitarian aid. To learn more about the situation in Pakistan, Newsnet host Hannah Thibodeau spoke with Winnipegger Musoor Khan. He's the president of Canada's Pakistan Trade and Cultural Association of Manitoba, and he joined her from Islamabad, Pakistan this morning.
So basically right now the rescue and relief activities are going on. But of course, the livelihoods of the people really depended on the livestock and farming. And literally the crops and the livestock have literally, the life has been crippled because everything is lost. Almost 33 million people have been displaced. So right now, the needs are medicines, medical aid, food. Food is, of course, the biggest insecurity that people face right now. Emergency education and, deterring those vector-borne and waterborne diseases, which is another disaster that looms as per experts. In the next couple of weeks to 4 weeks, this could be a widespread outbreak of those diseases. So right now, medical camps are being set up, which is, of course, the biggest need of the people, and the food insecurity for children, women, children, and the vulnerable people could be at the risk of malnutrition.
let me just repeat that stat you just gave us. You said nearly 33 million people displaced. Is that correct?
33 million displaced as per the stats of the government of Pakistan.
That is nearly the population of Canada. Just imagine that number of people who are displaced. There's food insecurity, lack of medicine, and even as the water starts to recede, what are your concerns?
First of all, you know, the water has not started to recede. Of course, you know, the level in this river is very high at the moment. There's this city, Dadu in Sindh, which is at the risk of being submerged at the moment. So, you know, as the water passes towards the south, more and more cities are under the grip of the water, and there's more chance of flooding, urban flooding and flash flooding. Of course, flash flooding was from the mountains, but the risk of urban flooding is still there, and it has not receded. But as soon as, of course, in the areas where it has receded, the biggest risk, as I mentioned earlier, is the widespread outbreak of waterborne and vector-borne diseases, and children and vulnerable people are at the most risk at the moment. And of course, you know, because the Karakoram highway up to the north, there's issues of access. The roads have been broken. So, for example, staples like wheat and flour cannot be transported up there. And, you know, everything is very limited delivery by helicopters, by sorties. So people, of course, have no food, literally, and there's no employment. There's no shelter, and then people are under the merciless sky. So, you know, people need tents, people need temporary shelters. So these are basically the biggest problems.
Canada announced it will provide $5 million to help scale up that humanitarian response. Is there anything else that the Canadian government can do?
So right now there are two things: shelters, medical camps to deter any vector and waterborne diseases, and food. So three things are at the moment require the most attention. And I think people can step up and, you know, donate for the brothers and sisters in Pakistan who are affected by an issue that is common to us, which is global warming. Pakistan is literally the ground zero for global warming right now. And, you know, being only 1% of the emitters, I think it is unfair for Pakistan to face such a catastrophe. And I think the world needs to step up, and Canadian brothers and sisters need to step up to fight this global issue, which can hurt anyone else in the future as well.
Masroor Khan, I want to thank you for your time and for your good work on the ground there.
Thank you so much.
Still ahead, Canada's gross domestic product was up again in the second quarter of this year. More details after the break. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Canada's gross domestic product was up again in the second quarter of this year. The measure of all the goods and services produced in the country grew more than 3%. But there are signs it's about to slow down. CBC's Peter Armstrong has the details.
In a lot of ways, Canada's economy is at a crossroads. The first half of the year saw solid, even enviable rates of growth throughout the economy. Much of that came as a result of broad loosening of COVID restrictions. Canadians resumed dining out, going to shows, travel picked up, and hotels filled their rooms. Today's numbers confirm Canada posted some of the best economic growth rates in the Western world. But GDP looks back, in this case at what was happening in April, May, and June. And by the end of June, that growth was starting to slow.
We had a pretty strong boost coming out of Q1, which helped to support that Q2 headline number. But going into Q3, it looks like it's going to be a pretty weak print, and we're expecting that to continue going into the end of the year and into next year.
Statistics Canada's preliminary estimate for GDP growth in July shows the economy probably contracted as households feel the bite of inflation eating into their purchasing power. Higher interest rates are squeezing indebted households. The Bank of Canada is using higher interest rates to tame inflation, but those rates also cool the economy. And just look down the main street of your town or neighborhood. You don't need to be an economist to see the impact. Just about everything, everywhere, is still far more expensive than it was this time last year. Your mortgage, your car payments are up and are expected to rise through the fall.
Canadians are still, quite eager to spend money. It's just the interests, the so-called interest-sensitive sectors like housing, are now starting to get hit and hit hard.
That's tough enough when an economy is growing. As growth slows, it poses all new challenges for consumers, businesses, and policymakers alike. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made a small tweak to his cabinet. The shuffle was announced earlier at Rideau Hall in Ottawa.
I, Philomena Tassi, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear.
Philomena Tassi and Helena Jaczyk are switching positions. Jaczyk is taking over as Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Tassi becomes the minister responsible for the Federal Economic Development Agency for Southern Ontario. Tassi, who is from the Hamilton, Ontario area, requested the move so she could spend more time closer to home. Her husband recently suffered 2 strokes. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland spoke publicly today about the verbal attack she experienced while touring Alberta Friday. She said this one, quote, unpleasant incident doesn't overshadow the hospitality she's received in her home province. But the incident prompted Justin Trudeau to call on political leaders of all stripes to condemn such attacks. It also raised new concerns about harassment of public figures and their security needs. Ashley Burke has more.
Chrystia! Yes? What the are you doing in Alberta? You traitor!
The Deputy Prime Minister verbally accosted.
You're a traitor! You bitch!
Followed by a man and others at Grand Prairie City Hall as they hurled abuse.
Look, what happened was wrong, and we need to be clear about that.
Today, Chrystia Freeland addressed what happened and said she's continuing to follow security advice from the RCMP.
I am conscious that there are a lot of journalists and politicians across the country who have a lot less support than I do, who can face challenging situations.
For weeks, a group of female journalists of color have been speaking out, warning of a coordinated effort online to target them with racist, misogynist, and sexually violent death threats.
It was the #1 thing that my family was worried about when I ran.
Marcy Ian, a former journalist turned politician who's faced online hate herself, called for allyship.
This is a time for people to stand up and speak out about some serious wrongs.
We will be there.
The Prime Minister says the hate has to stop.
The aggressive, bullying, hate-filled tactics of a small number of people is causing us to have to rethink the freedoms that we've had as parliamentarians and as Canadians in a democracy to walk down the street alongside a member of Parliament.
MPs are offered panic buttons in case of an emergency, but should cabinet ministers be given RCMP protection like the Prime Minister?
Although I do appreciate measures are important, and yes, they provide some level of safety and security, monitoring our homes, for example, with cameras, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be enough.
The Prime Minister said the government is looking at how it can provide more security to ministers, noting it's an expensive and also very personal decision. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
The former president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, has died at the age of 91. He died in a Moscow hospital yesterday following a lengthy illness. Gorbachev is often credited with ending the Cold War and opening relations with the West. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. Today, Gorbachev is being remembered as a leader who brought history-making change. CBC's Briar Stewart reports.
There's been a lot of reaction today from world leaders about the death of Mikhail Gorbachev. Outside of Russia, many praised him as a statesman and a peacemaker. U.S. President Joe Biden described him as a rare leader with the imagination to envision a different future. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said Gorbachev changed the world.
Mikhail Gorbachev is one of those people who triggered a series of changes that perhaps he didn't anticipate. Maybe he paid his own political price for it. But when history is written, he will be, I think, one of the authors of fantastic change for the better.
When Gorbachev came to power, he rolled out reforms to try and reinvigorate the Soviet economy and make society more open. But at the same time, he focused on diplomacy and met with then U.S. President Ronald Reagan. They signed a nuclear disarmament treaty. But unrest ensued at home. There were growing protests and even violent crackdowns in the Baltic regions, including Lithuania. His reforms gave way to a tumultuous time which eventually led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's what many Russians are remembering him for, but others argue that's a mistake.
I know that one of the popular narratives that he was a weak politician, that he couldn't hold the power, but I think it's his advantage because he gave the freedom, he gave the opportunity to live better lives.
Today, Russia's President Vladimir Putin put out a statement to Gorbachev's family, saying that he had a huge impact on history. There are reports that his funeral will be held this Saturday. Those who knew Gorbachev said he was devastated by Russia's decision to invade Ukraine and destroy any good relations that the country had left with the West. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration today approved an updated COVID-19 vaccine booster shot from Moderna and Pfizer. This is the first time updated vaccines for the illness have been authorized for emergency use in the U.S. The new shots are bivalent vaccines. They combine the original vaccine with one that targets Omicron sublineages. Before they're administered in the U.S., the booster shots must also be approved by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention there. Health Canada is expected to make a decision on Moderna's new vaccine within the next week. The company has an agreement to supply Canada with 12 million doses of the new vaccine. UN inspectors headed to Ukraine's nuclear power plant today in a mission intended to secure the facility and avoid a catastrophe. Ukraine and Russia, which now controls the facility, have accused each other of attacking the area around the plant, which is the biggest in Europe.
My mission is a technical mission. It's a mission that seeks to prevent a nuclear accident and to preserve this important, the largest, the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, in the whole of Europe, not only in Ukraine. So this is what we are concentrating on.
Last week, the plant was temporarily knocked offline after fire damaged a transmission line. It caused widespread concern that the war in Ukraine could result in a massive radiation leak or even a reactor meltdown. Officials in the area have been distributing anti-radiation pills to residents. Well, as we head to break, we want to remind you to subscribe to our CBC Manitoba YouTube page. Your latest headlines are on there, and we're also now posting the newscast. Catch up and stay connected anytime. Rice is probably not the first crop that comes to mind when you think about what Canadian farmers grow, but a couple of Nova Scotia's Annapolis Valley are having some success with it. They say there's a market for Canadian rice and think it's a crop other farmers should grow too. Frances Willick has their story.
A passerby might be forgiven for thinking at first glance that this is a field of wheat or maybe barley. It's not. This is rice, something of an unusual sight in Nova Scotia. Nikki Clark and Ian Curry have been growing the crop on their farm in Granville Beach since 2014.
It's a beautiful crop, as you can see, and it's fun to grow, and it's delightful to eat. It goes with everything.
The couple start out in spring, planting the grains with tweezers into trays in their greenhouse. Once the seedlings are big enough, they hand plant them into the field and then flood it with water from their pond. They say the rice paddy has developed a whole ecosystem of its own.
I have more frogs and toads and snakes and turtles and piping plovers. Yesterday I was walking along and there was a little baby muskrat heading out.
Curry says the climate here is suitable for rice, and climate change with its longer growing seasons will make it even more suitable.
It likes it here. I haven't, of all the varieties I've trialed, they all do well. Any problems with the rice is probably my mistake rather than the rice's fault.
Curry and Clark started growing rice because of health concerns about imports, but the crop also fits in perfectly with their ideal of self-sufficiency.
People are used to going to the grocery store and seeing just incredible variety on the shelves, but it is just-in-time variety, and if anything breaks down with that supply chain, and we've seen that. And COVID was very illustrative in showing us just how things can fall apart quickly. So I think we all really have a responsibility to be more aware of where our food comes from support our local farmers so they can take care of us better.
Last year, the couple produced about 80 kilos of rice, much more than what they would eat in a year.
We sold rice last year, and the people who bought it loved it, and they want more. So I have no trouble selling my rice.
Curry and Clark encourage other farmers in the province to give it a try. Frances Willick, CBC News, Granville Beach.
Well, John Sauter is back. John?
Yes.
In your last forecast, do I need glasses? Did I see snow?
Well, you know, on the Futurecast, it shows blue as rain and yellow would be heavier rain. And then there's that other color, white.
White?
And this would be in the middle of the night, Thursday into Friday, and in the very far north, like right on the northern border of Manitoba. But,
I'm not ready.
Well, we're going to start to see that creeping into the Futurecast and the forecast modeling in the coming weeks, months, hopefully.
Oh, John.
But nothing like that in the south. Let's get to the temperatures and you'll see why. Yeah, we're looking at 30s all across southern Manitoba. It's 29 in Winnipeg at the airport and downtown. We've got 29 in Morris, 30 in Eli. Check out the temperatures in the west, 31s and 32s. You can see how much cooler it is back to the east because you're just a little farther away from that upper ridge that covers the prairies. Barons River right now at 23, and then across the north, a little cooler, mid-20s out west, 12 in Thompson right now, 19 in Norway House, and 7 in Churchill. And yes, there is a system moving in that is going to kind of bring a bit of a change up as we head into Thursday night and on through the day Friday. These are the overnight lows now. Now, this number, for instance, 18, an overnight low in Churchill. A normal overnight low in mid-July would be closer to 13. So yes, this is a very mild air mass that will work its way a little farther east into tomorrow. Generally clear skies, mid-teens, 16 in Winnipeg, slightly cooler just outside the city, 13 in Brandon, 16 in Dauphin, 17 over around Portage, and 19 in Morden and Winkler and right around Carman. And then we may see some overnight showers here. It's about 60% in the Paw, more like 30% in Flin Flon. The rest of the region's not seeing too much in the way of rain tonight. However, tomorrow, that's when you've got showers, a risk of thunderstorms. Still warm with those showers to the west, 22 in Thompson. So you get the warm sector of the low bringing in some of that rain and then the cooler air in behind it for the coming days. Churchill kind of on the north side of that low, and you'll start with sunshine and end up with some afternoon showers and a risk of a thunderstorm. So the farther north and farther east, it's a little bit later. All while in the south, it's a surface high pressure. Brandon, 34 tomorrow. That would be a record if we see that. The old record, as mentioned earlier, about 33 in 2007. The rest of us, most of us in the 30s, even out toward the White Shell. Then in northwestern Ontario, we've got a 31 in Fort Francis and a sunny 28 tomorrow. In Kenora, Red Lake could see an afternoon thunderstorm.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
Princess Diana died in a car crash in Paris 25 years ago today, but her life continues to resonate with her admirers. CBC's Chris Brown has more from London.
Diana's death a quarter century ago was a seismic event for Great Britain and its monarchy.
25 years she's been gone and people still remembering her every day, like myself. I came here in 1997 when all the flowers were everywhere.
Outside her former home, Kensington Palace, some fans shared a cake in her honour.
Princess Diana shared things with people. We want the same thing. We want to share with people.
Yeah. Some of these tributes are quite lengthy and also very personal, touching on her sons William and Harry. We'll watch over your sons, their wives, and your grandchildren and your family. And this one here, your light shines through in the faces of your children and your grandchildren. There was a memorial in Paris too, outside the tunnel where her limo slammed into a concrete pillar at high speed. Diana, who was 36, died a short time later in hospital.
She made you feel like you mattered.
Diana's legacy is especially poignant for Tessie Ojo, who administers the Diana Awards for young people who demonstrate compassion for others.
I remember vividly watching her, for someone of color, watching her hold this little girl who I think she had AIDS or her parents had AIDS. Nobody else in her position had ever happened. And for me, I was that little girl, and suddenly you were visible to her.
Just as Diana was notoriously mistreated by other royals, her sons William and Harry have fallen out over the allegedly poor treatment of Harry's wife, Meghan.
People should expect the real me in this, and probably the me that they've never gotten to know.
Controversially, Meghan just launched her new podcast, knowing the focus would be on Diana, says this royal watcher.
She is married to Prince Harry, and it is part of his legacy, but I think that the timing could have been different.
The soap opera over her sons and her ex-husband and future king, Charles, keeps Diana's name in the news, but people here say the example she set helping others is why her legacy endures. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
It looks like an elongated blueberry, and it's full of nutrients, and it's growing right here in Manitoba. Coming up, we'll hear about a Haskeberry orchard in West St. Paul. Stay with us. You may not have heard of Haskeberries, but you could see them around a little bit more often soon. The relatively new berry looks like an elongated blueberry. It is full of antioxidants and vitamin C. It's also zone 2 hardy, which means it's well suited to cold climates. Trina Zacharias is co-owner of Haskeberry Orchards in West St. Paul. A few years ago, they made the switch from growing grains to Haskep. Trina joins me now.
Hi, Fiona.
Hi. So, Trina, why did you decide to grow Haskep berries?
My husband and I both made the decision in 2019. As farmers in Manitoba and Saskatchewan well know, that it was an extremely difficult harvest. So at that point, we just decided that perhaps grain farming was not in the cards for us in the future. Didn't quite know what we were going to do, but a friend was over who had recently done a research report on Saskatoons, and she suggested Saskatoons.
Oh, okay. So then you went to Haskep. So what work went into getting your orchard set up?
Oh boy, a lot of research. I had gone down to the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, and they had their Haskep days in 2019. So I had gone down there and I sampled about 20 different varieties of Haskep. I learned quite a bit about the Haskep berry and decided on the top 5 Haskep berries that I really enjoyed the flavors. So brought that home, and in 2020, my husband and I planted 20,000 of the University of Saskatchewan's Haskep berries.
20,000, you went all in. So,
went all in.
So you talk about the taste. If someone doesn't know what a Haskep berry tastes like, does it taste like a blueberry?
A lot of people have described them as a cross between a blueberry and a raspberry. I really do find that those tones come through for me when I'm eating the Haskep. The different varieties come with a different Brix level, it's called. It's their sweetness level. So our varieties range from a slightly tart to a very sweet flavor. And they're a very juicy berry compared to a blueberry.
So now, what is your favorite way to eat a Haskep berry?
Fresh. Yeah, I mean, they can be used in anything that you would typically find a berry. You know, like your typical pies and jams. A lot of people are starting to look more at the health qualities of the Haskep, and perhaps maybe we'll see them in nutraceuticals shortly.
So what makes them so healthy? Why should someone try them?
Haskep have 3 to 4 times the antioxidants of a blueberry. They have 5 to 6 times the vitamin C of a blueberry. They are extremely high in also vitamin A and E, fiber, magnesium, calcium. Extremely healthy berry, and they are for centuries known as the berry of long life and longevity.
Okay, I need to get some of this. This sounds like a miracle berry. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Trina, and happy harvest.
Oh, thank you very much.
Trina Zacharias is co-owner of Haskeberry Orchards in West St. Paul. Still ahead, your daily lift. Plus, John Sauter is back with a look at your 7-day forecast. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News.
Yeah, another hot day on the way for tomorrow, 32 in Winnipeg, even warmer to the west, and then a cold front. You know what that means? Colder weather. That's why it's called a cold front. 21 on Friday, 23 Saturday, but then we get back into the heat. 27 by Sunday, holiday Monday is 29, and it looks like that kind of weather into next week. It's tomato season, Fiona. Sometimes people end up with too many tomatoes.
And you know what? In Spain, they have had their annual Big Tomato Fest. Thousands of people showed up for the event, and, well, it got more than messy. Here's your daily lift. Truckloads of overripe tomatoes were brought in for the famous Tomatina Food Fight Festival. About 130,000 tons of them in all. The fruit didn't meet the standards for human consumption, and about 20,000 people were on hand to get covered in tomato pulp. The event lasted about an hour, but the cleanup will take a little bit longer than that. The festival is back for the first time since COVID-19 restrictions were put on hiatus 2 years ago. John, would you do it?
Yeah, but I would wear ski goggles or some kind of eye protection, that sort of thing, and maybe a helmet because it would get very slippery. Safety first, everyone.
Safety first.
In case you get one of those things.
Well, that's our show for Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. For more on these stories, you can log on to our website. John and I will be back at 11. Good night.
See you later. Yeah, another hot day on the way for tomorrow, 32 in Winnipeg, even warmer to the west, and then a cold front. You know what that means? Colder weather. That's why it's called a cold front. 21 on Friday, 23 Saturday, but then we get back into the heat. 27 by Sunday, holiday Monday is 29, and it looks like that kind of weather into next week. It's tomato season, Fiona. Sometimes people end up with too many tomatoes.
And you know what? In Spain, they have had their annual Big Tomato Fest. Thousands of people showed up for the event, and, well, it got more than messy. Here's your daily lift. Truckloads of overripe tomatoes were brought in for the famous Tomatina Food Fight Festival. About 130,000 tons of them in all. The fruit didn't meet the standards for human consumption, and about 20,000 people were on hand to get covered in tomato pulp. The event lasted about an hour, but the cleanup will take a little bit longer than that. The festival is back for the first time since COVID-19 restrictions were put on hiatus 2 years ago. John, would you do it?
Yeah, but I would wear ski goggles or some kind of eye protection, that sort of thing, and maybe a helmet because it would get very slippery. Safety first, everyone.
Safety first.
In case you get one of those things.
Well, that's our show for Wednesday. Thanks for tuning in. For more on these stories, you can log on to our website. John and I will be back at 11. Good night.
See you later.